So today we're going to be discussing the moss life cycle. Moss is part of the phylum Bryophyta. It lacks vascular tissue and therefore is limited to pretty moist areas because it requires water for the transportation of sperm, as well as it does not have the vascular tissue to transport the water throughout the plant, so it simply has to absorb it. And the moss also reproduces using spores and not seeds. So now, taking a look at this life cycle, we're going to divide it in two. And this upper part is the dominant stage. It is the haploid stage. And this stage is the gametophyte. And so that's what, when we think about moss, that's what we're seeing, the gametophyte stage. Now this lower section is the diploid stage, and it's the like the sporophyte stage. So starting with fertilization, when we look at the archegonium is the female reproductive part, and it's going to be containing the egg. It's like this sac-like structure here. Inside that, we can see the zygote, which is the fertilized egg. So I'm going to abbreviate this. So the zygote is going to mature and divide into a young sporophyte. Which is this stalk-like structure that's starting to poke out of the archegonium. Now it's going to develop further and into a mature sporophyte. In this image we can see this stalk-like structure is called the seta, and then the bulbous structure on the end is the sporangium. Now the sporangium is what is going to bring us back to the haploid stage of life for the moss. The sporangium is going to divide through meiosis. I'm just going to abbreviate that as well, and produce spores. So these spores are either going to be a female or male spores, and once they land in a hospitable environment, they're going to start growing and dividing through mitosis and produce these buds. Now, after maturing more, they're called this is the male gametophyte. This is the female gametophyte. The male gametophyte is called an antheridium. The female gametophyte is the archegonium. Both the male and female divide using mitosis to produce sperm and egg. This differs from how animals reproduce because we divide using meiosis to produce the egg and sperm, which I forgot to mention, but this meiosis produces the spores that are not genetically identical. And so then moving on, after the antheridium produces sperm, these are flagellated, and they will swim through water, and they'll swim down and into the archegonium, which is housing the so far unfertilized egg. And they will fertilize the egg, and that brings us back to the diploid stage of life for the moss, and this cycle just goes on and on. So to recap that really quick, after fertilization, the zygote develops into a sporophyte. This sporophyte goes through meiosis and produces spores. these spores develop into either a male or female gametophyte. The male gametophyte is the antheridium, the female gametophyte is the archegonium, which will then produce through mitosis either sperm or egg, which will bring us back to fertilization. So for the next slide, we can see moss. What we normally think of moss is this green stuff. This is what the sporophyte is growing out of, the archegonium. So the sporophyte is this whole structure. The seta is this stalk-like structure that holds the sporangium up. Now this sporangium, as we said earlier, is going to produce spores through meiosis. So produce spores through meiosis. And these spores will go on and produce male or female gametophytes. And yeah, thank you so much.